T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. You've probably heard of it. It's one of the most famous poems of the 20th century, and it's got this reputation for being this chaotic, despairing look at a world totally shattered by war. But what if that despair is really only half the story? Let's dive in, because it turns out this poem might be less about ruin and a lot more about a hidden path to peace.
You know, Eliot himself practically tells us how to read it. He says the poem is built from fragments, things he's shored against my ruins. It's such a perfect image of a disconnected, broken world, right? So the question is he just documenting this total collapse, or is he actually trying to build something new out of all that rubble?
And that's really the core question we're going to dig into. If you look at the poem through the lens of Indian philosophy, something amazing happens. The wasteland stops looking like a dead end and starts looking like a roadmap, a kind of guide to finding meaning in a world that seems to have lost it entirely.
Okay, so before you can find the cure, you've got to understand the sickness. And Eliot, he starts with a diagnosis. He sees this deep spiritual illness in the modern West, especially after the trauma of World War I. He saw a society just hollowed out by a profound kind of emptiness. And it's so important to get this. The wasteland isn't some physical desert. It's an internal state of being. The characters in the poem, they're chasing pleasure, money, distractions, anything to feel something. But they're always left hollow, disconnected, and just spiritually starved. It's like they have everything, and yet they have absolutely nothing.
To explain this emptiness, Eliot actually draws on some really old ideas from Indian philosophy. The first is the Hindu concept of Maya, which is all about illusion. It's this idea that we get so easily trapped by the world of appearances, material things, superficial desires, and we start to mistake all that stuff for what's truly real.
And that connects perfectly to another huge idea, the Buddhist concept of tanha. This is that endless craving, that unquenchable thirst for more, which, according to Buddhism, is the ultimate source of all our suffering. The people in the wasteland are just burning with this desire, but it never, ever brings them any real satisfaction.
So you put it all together, and what do you have? The people in this poem are trapped in what Buddhism calls samsara, this relentless, grinding cycle of suffering. They keep making the same mistakes, chasing the same empty pleasures, and they're soaking up information without ever finding any real wisdom. They're basically stuck on a hamster wheel that they built themselves.
But here's where the poem just pivots completely. After laying out the diagnosis, this deep sickness, Eliot actually offers a cure. And the solution? Well, it's found in the final section, a part called What the Thunder Said.
Imagine it. In this dry, sterile wasteland, a storm finally starts to gather, and out of the thunder comes not just rain, but a voice. And this voice speaks 3 words in Sanskrit, taken directly from these ancient Hindu texts called the Upanishads. This, right here, is the ethical heart of the entire poem.
The thunder gives us this 3-step path to healing. Dada, which means give. Dayadvam, be compassionate. And damyada, control yourself. Now, these aren't just some vague suggestions. They are powerful commands, an urgent ethical guidebook for a world that's falling apart.
And what's so cool is that each one of these commands directly counters a specific sickness of the wasteland. Give is the perfect antidote to selfishness. Be compassionate is how you break down those walls of emotional isolation. And control yourself, well, that's how you master those destructive desires, that tanha we talked about that causes so much pain.
So when you start to see the poem like this, as both a diagnosis and a prescription, its whole meaning just shifts. Suddenly, those fragments aren't just ruins anymore. They're pieces of a lesson we are all meant to learn.
I mean, the contrast is just so stark. On one side, you have the modern wasteland. It's fragmented, it's restless, and it's totally out of control. And on the other side, the Upanishadic path offers this perfect counterbalance: generosity, compassion, and self-control. Eliot is basically using Eastern philosophy as a mirror to show the West what it's lost. And this brings us to what might be the most powerful way to read this poem. The wasteland isn't the end. It's a school. All the suffering and the failure we see isn't pointless at all. It's all part of a lesson designed to create a real opportunity for growth, for reflection, and for real change.
This means that the path out of the wasteland isn't passive. You can't just sit back and wish your way out. According to this ethical framework, true healing requires work. It requires the active, daily practice of these virtues.
Okay, so this brings us to the poem's very famous and very often misunderstood ending. After the thunder speaks its wisdom, Eliot leaves us with one final powerful word.
He closes the entire thing with a formal ending to an Upanishad. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Now, this is usually translated as peace, but its meaning here is so much deeper than just, silence or the absence of war.
Shanti is the kind of peace that comes from putting things back in order. It's the harmony you achieve within yourself, with other people, and with the whole world by living a life of generosity, compassion, and self-control. It's not a given peace, it's an earned peace.
And this is the final brilliant stroke from Eliot. He doesn't give us a fairy tale ending. The wasteland hasn't magically bloomed into a garden. Instead, he just presents this idea of Shanti as the goal. He shows us this huge, gaping chasm between the world as it is and the profound peace that is possible if we actually choose to follow the path. In the end, the wasteland leaves us with this timeless, powerful question. 100 years after it was written, the poem forces us to look at our own fragmented world and ask ourselves, what does it really take? What ethical actions of giving, of compassion, of self-control to find real, meaningful peace?